Well, you might have caught a news item from earlier this week where the Prime Minister issued a national apology to victims who had taken the drug thalidomide many decades ago. Well, there's some challenges in all of that because there are a lot of people still feeling as though they're reeling from the effects of COVID vaccines. Bill Muehlenberg has been reflecting on apologies and Big Pharma, big bucks and big apologies this week. And he's back with us. Hey, Bill, welcome back to 2020.
Great to be with you.
Well, Bill, it did seem a little unusual even to hear an apology coming from the Prime Minister around thalidomide, but it does have some special alignment, doesn't it, to people who might be feeling the effects of Big Pharma and some recent issues around the vaccines for COVID. You've been thinking through this issue fairly deeply this week.
Well, it was covered in all the media, this apology. A lot of victims, as you probably know, 1953, Germany first introduced this. A big pharmaceutical company thought it'd be fine on pregnant women, supposed to be good for morning sickness and the like. But as we know, a lot of people died, a lot of babies born with severe birth defects. So anyway, other countries in the past have already done national apologies. So today, long overdue, I suppose. Albanese, on earlier this week, Albanese said, we have to say sorry. We didn't do enough to protect you. We were not as diligent and as careful as we should have been. We thought it was safe, but obviously wasn't. On and on. So that was a good and proper thing to say for the remaining victims, many of whom did show up for that apology in Canberra. But you have to ask questions, right? Big Pharma is still a thing today. We know they made heaps of money over the COVID years and with the vaccines. Again, we're not knocking the pharmaceutical industry as such. Every time I get a headache, a toothache, right, pop an aspirin, Panamax, paracetamol, all this stuff took years to develop in labs and testing, research, development, a lot of money spent. So when companies develop things like this, we can be thankful for them. But we know that it doesn't always go right. Sometimes things are rushed. Sometimes there's no real fail-safe policies with the folks who did thalidomide. People said, it's safe, it's fine. And they knew within a year already in Germany that there were serious problems, but they delayed in warning people. So anyways, we always have to be vigilant. And obviously, we can get good out of Big Pharma, but we can get real problems as well if we're not careful.
As you say, the thalidomide controversy goes right back to 1953. So we're talking 70 years ago. And I wonder whether there might even be 70 years before some sort of recognition of some of the challenges that some have felt have been very serious around the COVID vaccines.
Yeah, again, not wishing to denigrate all vaccines, obviously, where, in fact, the overwhelming majority who had concerns about the COVID vaccines have not been, and probably never will be, anti-vaxxers. We simply recognize your kind of typical 10-year period of developing, testing, trialing a vaccine was certainly not the case here. They were rushed through for COVID. Some people might say it was a good thing. Others say, wait a minute. And now we have, of course, entire individuals, groups, even nations who are now talking about lawsuits, suing the big pharma companies that were pushing this. We have millions of reports now worldwide of various kinds of negative side effects. Deaths have been included in this, right? So this whole idea of suddenly dying, people are saying, where does this come from? Why are we now reporting, athletes, people in the peak of their condition dying at 20 or 30? What's going on? So a lot of people wondering, are there connections here? And if so, were the governments too much rushing into this? Were there not enough checks and balances? Were the big pharma outfits making way too much money and too happy to keep pumping these things out? So as you say, well, hopefully we don't wait 70 years, hopefully maybe 7 months would be good. There's already a lot of lawsuits out there, individuals and groups. There's indemnity in America. You can't even touch these companies until a year from now. That was part of the deal in America. So, yeah, something's got to give. There's a lot of things that have gone wrong, and we need to have some transparency here.
Well, Big Pharma have to do trials of new medications and vaccines, and sometimes there will be side effects, even lives lost. Progress has a price, doesn't it? I mean, you've got to make trials and you've got to bear with consequences if those trials don't all go right. Is there something in there that we can be generous towards Big Pharma when it comes to trying to resolve the issues that were around a major international pandemic?
Yeah. Well, again, as we say, every day we take medicines and products from Big Pharma and the drug companies, and, and we praise God for them, the things we can do. Wearing glasses, eyesight, as we said, taking pain relief medicines, things for whatever, motion sickness, going on an airplane, whatever. We have so many things available that we're very grateful for. And as you say, went through a lot of testing, trials, years of making sure they're good. Now, after the thalidomide debacle, many countries said not only do we have to test for, any negative side effects, we have to test to see if these things are actually effective. Do they really work? Are they living up to the hype and the promises? So, regulations have tended to get more strict over years. One wonders if they were too lax or too much played down during the COVID years. So, if a company admits that they made mistakes and is offer, compensation where needed, that might be one thing. But when you have so many of these groups, as we say, they have sued, at least not for years to come, well, then you got to wonder, do you really, is helping people really your main thing, or is it making a hefty profit and not being sued along the way? So, again, there is a pro and con here. We thank God for those industries that help us have good medicines, but in a fallen world, people do things bad. Money can buy science. Money can buy medicine. Money can buy Big Pharma. So we always have to show some due caution.
Interesting to reflect on what a Christian position might be when you've gone through a particular experience, and for some it's been a bad experience. Others have had not such a bad experience and they'd say things were quite good. But holding governments or Big Pharma to account, is there a Christian position on that, Bill? Because a certain issue around justice brings us back to how we might think about those good or bad things that have happened as a result of Big Pharma and of government decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Justice is a key Christian theme and principle. Take it on a local level, right? If I made some homemade jam and it was a bit dodgy, sold it to my neighbor, they got quite sick and went to hospital after eating my homemade jam. Right. You would think there's a good case to be made, drag me off to court and, what was I doing? Did I know this was safe? And so on and so on. Well, if we do it to individuals, surely we do it to governments and to big corporations. If they're selling products, they have to make pretty well sure these are safe, these are effective, and they are going to do what they're promising to do. And there should be consequences if it's been proven that, say, the process was rushed through, or there were not enough checks and balances, or where there was malfeasance or neglect of duty. So many things a court of law could look into, and many are doing that now with the COVID vaccine. So I think that is a principle of justice, and Christians should indeed back something like that.
And what about the Prime Minister issuing an apology on the issue around thalidomide? And as you say, dating back to 1953. Is it a good thing, do you think, that we do hear apologies from Prime Ministers? Is this a good thing that Anthony Albanese has done? And is it likely, you think, there might be something quicker than 70 years around another apology coming?
Yeah, well, we hope so. I mean, I believe something like 1961 is actually when the first Australians were taking this drug, but that's still 60 years, right? Well, first of all, you'd think hopefully the companies themselves need to be issuing, well, not just an apology, probably a payment for all the, well, you can't repay a life lost, but you can repay for those who are still now suffering as invalids or with all kinds of birth defects and things that, well, many of these people born without limbs and so on. Certainly the companies involved should be apologizing, but yeah, to the extent governments have been complicit with Big Pharma in some of this, well, yeah, there's a place for them to do the same. So as we say, we won't hold our breath, but it'd be nice if in the very near future, some of the real issues we had with the COVID, means the whole and all the suffering that entailed, it would be good to see some national apologies for that. But we'll probably have to wait a bit, I suspect.
And of course, there's national apologies way after the fact. I guess there's that warning, isn't there, that comes to all governments who have ability to be able to regulate industry like the big pharma industries and being too quick to offer indemnities when there are particularly risky medications or vaccines. Perhaps that's one of the lessons that needs to be learned.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As we say, the big pharma has to pay the price. They put in millions, probably billions of dollars to test, research, develop products. They got to bear that. They got to wear that. But if it's a successful product, well, they'll make a lot of money, but hopefully a lot of people will be helped as well. So there's a good trade-off there, but it doesn't always work that way. It doesn't always go according to plan. Sometimes things are rushed through. Sometimes there may even be inside knowledge that this may not be as safe as it could be, but they'll push it anyway. So in that sense, yeah, we have to hold companies to account, and governments, if they're in bed with them, they need to be held to account as well.
Well, Bill, appreciate your insights as always. And for listeners, you might want to read about what Bill has been writing about, Big Pharma, Big Bucks and Big Apologies. You'll be able to find that on his website, billmuehlenberg.com, or simply Google Culture Watch, one word. Bill, thanks for another update today on 2020.
Many thanks indeed.